Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. And today, I'm reacting to my third and final Midnight Terrors video for you guys. And this one's 4 creepy, real Stalker horror stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the back. Okay, here we go.
I was 22 when this happened. At the time, I was working at a grocery store that had recently been featured on the news. It wasn't anything major, but it was enough that you could see me in the clip, and anyone watching would know exactly where I worked. I didn't think much of it, until I got back from vacation, and one of my coworkers told me that some guy had been coming around every single day for a week, asking for me. That definitely caught me off guard. I asked if they knew who he was or what he wanted, but nobody had any answers. Apparently, he looked about my age and seemed a little off. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but I figured if he showed up again, I'd see for myself.
He's probably a crazy stalker.
A few hours later, that's exactly what happened. My coworker came rushing over, telling me, "He's back." We had a computer in the back room where we could check the security cameras, so I pulled up the feed. Sure enough, there was a guy standing at the front of the store, looking around like he was waiting for someone. I had no idea who he was, but I decided to go talk to him and find out what this was all about. The moment I approached, I could tell he was drunk. He introduced himself, let's just call him James since I honestly don't remember his real name, and told me that he had seen me on TV and wanted to ask me out. Just like that. No shame. I quickly told him, "Sorry, but I have a boyfriend," even though I was totally single. I figured that would be the easiest way to shut it down.
Somebody's got a real mad crush on this female employee. And once she turns him down, he's not going to give up. But I don't want to jump ahead, so let's continue on with the story. Let's see what happens next.
But then, instead of taking the hint, he asked, "Should I come with you?" That weirded me out. I was working. Why would he even think that was an option? I told him no, walked away, and kept an eye on him through the cameras. Hours later, he was still outside, hanging around and drinking. I didn't feel safe walking out alone, so I had to leave through a different exit to avoid him. The next day, guess who was waiting for me outside the store? Yep, James. As soon as he saw me, he grinned like we were old friends and walked up. He didn't say anything at first, just hovered awkwardly until I finally said, "Hey." That's when he followed me inside and told me he needed to talk. I already knew where this was going. Sure enough, he asked me to go to the movies. I hit him with the same excuse as before. "Sorry, I have a boyfriend. Remember?" I turned to walk away, and he followed right behind me, offering to help with my work. At this point, it was beyond uncomfortable.
I'd be like, dude, you don't even work here. Why are you even offering to help? At this point, I'll be calling over the manager on what was going on, and then see if the manager would kick him out for good. I don't know why some people just don't take no for an answer, but if you're creeping people out, you need to back away and leave them alone. Clear and simple. But nope, this guy just wants to keep on pressuring her, and I don't like it already.
That became my new routine, checking the security cameras before leaving, making sure he wasn't waiting outside. After a while, I started having one of my male coworkers walk me to the tram after my shift, just in case. But James wasn't giving up. At one point, I got so frustrated that I asked my brother for help. He agreed to drop me off at work on his motorcycle and give me a big hug right in front of the store, hoping James would see and finally back off. It didn't work. Not long after, I started getting texts from an unknown number. Messages like, "Is that your boyfriend?" And, "He doesn't need to know if we go out." That was when it hit me. How did he even get my number? I started asking around at work, and sure enough, a new coworker admitted she had given it to him. She claimed he told her we were friends. I was furious. After that, I told my male coworkers to physically throw him out if he ever stepped foot in the store again. For a couple of weeks, I didn't see him. I started to relax, thinking maybe he had finally moved on. Yeah, right. One day, I was in the changing room before my shift when I overheard someone mention that we had a new employee starting. I didn't think much of it until I walked out and saw him standing there. James. My coworker cheerfully introduced him like nothing was wrong. Hey, this is James. I froze. My coworker noticed my reaction and asked what was wrong. I turned to her and said, I know who he is. This is the creep who's been stalking me for weeks. James just stood there smiling. I immediately went to find my boss. I demanded to know what was going on, but he just shrugged it off, saying he had no idea James was my stalker. Then he laughed, like it was some joke. I told him flat out, either he leaves or I do. He tried to smooth things over, promising that I wouldn't have to work the same shifts as James. That was a lie. Not only did we get scheduled together, but James followed me around constantly.
Oh, man, I would be furious if one of my coworkers gave my phone number out to a random stranger and I don't even know the person. I'm with this girl right here because if this guy just keeps stalking her and he just got hired on there, I'd be quitting ASAP and try to hide and get another job somewhere else just to get away from that creep. I know she feels the same way right now. And her boss is laughing it up. Are you kidding me? This is a serious situation right here.
He wouldn't speak, wouldn't interact with other coworkers, just followed me like a shadow. It got to the point where I started eating lunch in front of the security monitors, just so I could watch him watching me. And sure enough, there he was, standing behind me, staring. Eventually, even my boss had to admit James was a total creep. He barely did any work. His entire shift seemed to revolve around keeping tabs on me. My boss started looking for ways to fire him, but the final straw came when I caught James drunk at work. That gave my boss the excuse he needed, and James was finally fired. And just like that, the stalking stopped.
All it took was him being drunk at work to fire him. The manager should have listened to his employee to begin with. Because if he just acts like a stalker the entire time that he's on work hours, right behind her, that would be automatic. You either get to work or you're fired. That's it. If I was the boss of that store, I'll be like getting a restraining order against that guy to make sure he don't come around there no more. Because if he does, he's getting arrested. That's all you got to do, plain and simple. But I'm glad he's out of that store and not bothering her no more. Case closed in my book.
So a few months ago, I made this random post on Reddit because I found a necklace with a weird symbol on it and had no clue what it meant. Most people in the comments didn't seem to know either. But then this guy named Stan asked if he could DM me. His comment got buried or removed or something. I'm not sure if it was Reddit or the mods, but I was curious, so I searched his username and messaged him. Looking back, yeah, maybe that wasn't the smartest move, but at the time, I just wanted an answer. Stan sent me this bizarre story about how the necklace was called an elder sign, and that there were only 5 of them ever made. According to him, one of the original owners had recently passed away. It sounded like total nonsense.
I mean, I wouldn't find it a red flag just yet. If somebody has information on an item, I would like to hear about it. I'm always curious about learning about new things through history as well. So far, this person is getting the information that they need. But I know it's going to turn sour real quick.
But I played along, asking him questions just for fun. I didn't take any of it seriously, and after a while, I moved on. Then, about a month later, I made a completely unrelated post on other subreddit about some missing persons cases I vaguely remembered from when I was younger. Out of nowhere, Stan messaged me again, telling me to delete the post immediately because it was part of an ongoing investigation. He also told me to take down the necklace post. That was weird. I asked him to prove he was actually someone with authority, But instead of answering, he just kept pushing me to delete everything, getting more aggressive each time. At that point, I figured he was just messing with me for attention, so I ignored him and went on with my life. A few weeks later, I was working my shift at a convenience store when these two guys came in to buy frozen pizzas. They both looked like they were in their early to mid-20s. One had blonde hair, the other had black hair. Nothing seemed off until the black-haired guy looked right at me and said, "So, Livian, did anyone else ever tell you what the necklace meant?" I completely froze. My real name isn't Livian. It's just been my username online since I was a kid, and no one in my real life ever calls me that. The second he said it, I knew one of them had to be Stan, but I played dumb, pretending I had no idea what he was talking about. He just muttered, "Never mind," paid for the pizzas, and they left. I was freaked out because I had no idea how he found me. Then, as I was walking home, I saw them again. They were in a car driving alongside me, and both of them just stared at me. This cold, unsettling glare that made my skin crawl. At first, I assumed Stan was the blonde guy, since he was the one who spoke to me, but I never saw him again. The black-haired guy, though, I saw him a lot. The weird part was, he was never alone. Every time I spotted him, he was standing or walking with someone new. He never spoke to me, just stared, occasionally whispering something to whoever he was with. One day, he finally walked up to me. For the first time since that night at the store, he spoke, asking me if I had taken down my Reddit posts. I pretended not to know what he was talking about, but he kept pushing. He wouldn't let it go. Finally, I snapped and told him, "Dude, leave me alone," before walking away. I never reported him because, honestly, he didn't seem dangerous. Creepy, yes. Annoying, definitely. But he never did anything that screamed immediate threat. That changed when I noticed a car following me home from the laundromat. At first, I brushed it off as paranoia, but the more I looked at it, the more familiar it seemed. It looked exactly like Stan's car, the one I had only seen once before. Just to be sure, I pulled a little trick and took 3 left turns. He caught on and turned right before completing the loop, but by the time I got back to my apartment, he was already there, parked right outside, just standing there, watching me. That was when I finally called 911. I sat in my car, locked the doors, and rolled up the windows as I dialed. The second he noticed, he walked right up and started knocking on my window. I didn't react. I just kept my eyes on my phone, hoping the cops would get there fast. When the police finally arrived, they talked to him for a while, but I have no idea what he told them. Whatever it was, they didn't seem too concerned. When I showed them his messages and the stuff he had sent me on Reddit, they barely looked at it. They just told him to go home and told me that unless I had real proof he was stalking me beyond that, there wasn't much they could do. But at least it was enough to scare him off, because after that night, I never saw him again. No more messages, no more creepy stares, nothing. And trust me, I am so fine with that.
Well, dadgummit. I would have wished that the story ended that boy got arrested. Because one, he clearly was harassing this woman because she did not take down her post on Reddit or anything about the necklace. And he wasn't going to stop stalking her until she did, probably. But I know that they probably say, "Dude, if you don't leave her alone, she's going to call us again." But they should have took it more seriously. I mean, she got proof right there in her phone, and they should have arrested him like that. That makes me mad right there. But as long as he ain't bothering her no more, that's all that matters. I'm just glad she can live her life without him moving around and see where she goes every so often.
I was born and raised in Texas, but I moved to New York when I was 21. When I found out I'd have a couple of overnights in Austin for work, I was pumped to be back in my home state for a few days. My brother lived just north of the city, so we made plans to grab dinner when he got off work. And the next day, we were going to meet up with our dad. It was shaping up to be a nice little trip. I got to the hotel with my crew. We checked in, and then we all headed to our rooms. My room was nice enough, and I had barely set my stuff down when there was a loud, hard knock on the door. It was the middle of the afternoon, too early for my brother or dad to be showing up, especially since I hadn't even told them my room number yet. I figured maybe it was one of my crewmates, so I went to check. Before I even reached the door, a deep male voice called out, "Front desk sent me about the bathroom problem you called in."
No, don't answer the door. Don't answer the door. They're using that tactic to try to trick you into open up the door and then break in.
Then I heard the handle jiggling. "Unlock the door and open up, miss. I need in, now." I froze. First of all, I hadn't even been in the bathroom yet. Second, I definitely hadn't called anyone about a problem. Now, I may be small, but I'm not stupid. I know better than to just open the door for some random dude, especially when something feels off. I crept toward the peephole and took a look. He was a big guy, easily over 6 feet tall and probably more than double my weight. Yeah, absolutely no way I was opening that door. I called out, telling him he must have the wrong room. He didn't even hesitate before pounding on the door again, rattling the handle like he was trying to force his way in. "No, I need to get in now, and I'm getting in one way or another." At this point, I was panicking. My hands were shaking, but I managed to grab the phone and call the front desk. When I explained what was happening, the concierge immediately told me they hadn't sent anyone up and hadn't received any calls about a bathroom issue. The whole time, this guy kept banging on the door, growing more aggressive with every passing second. Thankfully, the front desk had already dispatched security to my floor. Within moments, I heard the elevator ding, followed by heavy footsteps in the hall. Security confronted the guy, demanding to know who he was and why he was trying to get into my room. He instantly got hostile, yelling at them like they were the ones causing the problem. While this was happening, the front desk clerk, who was still on the phone with me, said the police were on their way. I stayed locked in my room, terrified but listening to everything. A few minutes later, the cops showed up, and they arrested the guy for trespassing and criminal menacing or something along those lines. I thought that was the end of it, until I found out who he actually was. Turns out, he was wanted in connection to a series of break-ins and violent sexual assaults in Austin. And get this, he had spotted me the second I walked into the hotel lobby. Apparently, I fit his type of victim. I didn't sleep well for the rest of my stay. Nothing else happened after that, but knowing how close I came to real danger still sends chills down my spine.
Oh my goodness. Thank God her brain senses kicked in and go to the phone to call the front desk to get the security up there. But that really makes me mad that there's people like that in this world that just spy on women and go assault them. Then you traumatize women for life for doing that. Boy, I'm glad the police came and arrested him. I'm sorry that lady had to go through that. That's just wrong and horrible.
Back in my freshman year of college, there was this guy, let's call him Ron Jones, who ended up stalking me. I met him through a mutual friend, Chris, since they were both in the same club. He was a little odd, but he seemed nice enough, and he had this thick Slavic accent that made him stand out. I didn't think much of it at the time, just figured he was dealing with some culture shock since our school was in a small southern town. We exchanged numbers and texted here and there, nothing serious. Fast forward to October 3rd, I went to a drag show on campus with a friend. Ron wasn't able to get a ticket, so he was texting me during the night, asking how it was. At some point, I randomly mentioned that I was planning to stop by the convenience store on my way back to my dorm to grab some orange juice. Didn't really think much of it. My friend and I walked into the store, and guess who was already there? Ron. He immediately offered to buy the juice for me. I politely declined, but instead of just brushing it off, he got weirdly upset and stormed off. When we left the store, he was still standing outside. Since my dorm was right across the street, he watched as we walked into the building. Now here's where I made a mistake. I opened my window when I saw him still standing there. I felt kind of bad for rejecting his offer, so I apologized. He started chatting, and in the middle of our conversation, he straight up asked, "Can I flirt with you?" I enjoy doing that. I had no idea how to respond, so I just awkwardly laughed and said, okay? And if that wasn't dumb enough, I actually went outside to sit with him for a bit because I felt guilty. Yeah, not my brightest moment.
You see, here's where I stand about this. If he's one of those type of guys that just keeps on talking to you like a friend, I mean, I could see that being okay. But if he starts to get to the point where he just won't take no for an answer or knows where you live at, that's going to be automatic stalker red flags right there. This lady needs to be careful with him because you never know what he would do.
At first, things seemed normal, just some small talk. But it started getting cold, and he asked if we could go inside. At this point, I'd had plenty of guy friends over just to chill, so I didn't think anything of it. But as soon as we were alone in my room, it was like a switch flipped. His entire demeanor changed. He stopped blinking. His stare was unsettling, and he laughed in this slow, creepy way that made my skin crawl. Then, his Slavic accent, gone, just completely disappeared. That's when he told me he'd been lying. He wasn't Slavic at all. He was actually from the same state as our college. Things got progressively worse from there. He grabbed me in a hug and wouldn't let go until I repeatedly told him to stop. He started talking about all these bad things he'd done, and even offered to give me names of people who could prove it. Then he started going on these weird racist rants, and I just sat there in shock. He made gross, borderline sexual comments, too, talking about how showering was more fun with someone else, and even saying he'd go after me if he wasn't already dating someone. I kept trying to steer the conversation away from whatever unsettling direction he was going, but he wasn't letting up. Eventually, he asked if he could sleep in my room. That was my out. I told him no, then made up some excuse about being tired to get him to leave. As he was heading out, he stopped at the door and said, "Do you want to know how unsecure your locks really are?" Then he casually pulled out multiple IDs, all with different names. I shut the door on him, locked it, and checked through the peephole. He just stood there for way too long before finally walking away. After that night, he started calling me at random hours and popping up everywhere I went on campus. Chris, the friend who introduced us, eventually noticed Ron lurking whenever I was around and started walking with me everywhere. He even started carrying a knife just in case. It got bad. Ron would randomly show up, throw an arm around me, and whisper creepy things like, "We need to talk." He even started hanging around my dorm, just waiting outside. Then one day, he was just gone. Turns out Chris had reported him to our RA, and they banned him from my building. I hadn't reported him myself because I kept thinking I was overreacting. But looking back, I definitely wasn't. I blocked his number, and that was the last I heard from him for a while. Now, fast forward 2 years later, just when I thought this was behind me, I found out some disturbing stuff. Apparently, I wasn't the only one he'd stalked. He had a history of doing this to women, going back at least 5 years. I even met another girl he had stalked at his previous school, a community college he attended before transferring. Turns out, he followed her to our university after getting suspended for stalking 3 separate people there. What's worse, he's now an RA on our campus. The girl I met? She was one of his residents. When she reported her past experiences with him to the residential office, they basically told her, "Well, since it didn't happen here, there's nothing we can do." They offered her a room transfer instead of dealing with him. She and I both reported him to the residential office, which led to the campus police getting involved, and eventually, the dean of students. But when I gave his name to the housing department, they had no clue who I was talking about. That's when I realized he had given me a fake name from the very beginning. I remembered those multiple IDs in his wallet, but I never actually thought one of them was the name he gave me. When I went to the police, they barely seemed interested in what I had to say. The officer I spoke to even cut me off mid-story, and basically brushed me off like it was nothing. Then I found out the police report they sent to the dean had all kinds of mixed up details, confusing my story with other victims' experiences. And apparently, there were multiple other victims. Some had even reported that he got physical with them before he ever transferred to our school. And yet, he's still an RA. I saw him on campus just last week. If he ever contacts me again, I'm filing a no-contact order. But honestly, with the semester ending soon, I just want to be done with this. So yeah, there's no satisfying ending here. No justice, no big confrontation, nothing. But if there's anything to take away from this, it's that if someone gives you a bad vibe, trust it. Don't second guess yourself, and don't convince yourself you're overreacting.
Okay, I am pissed that this college is really turning a blind eye towards this whole matter. You got girls that are complaining about this dude and they can't do nothing about it. All they do is like transfer students to another dorm since he's a RA officer of Pacific One. That's stupid. Man, if I was her dad, I'd be furious too if I found out that was happening. And darn campus police want to cut off her statement because apparently the other statements don't line up. Are you kidding me? I mean, at this point, I'd be hiring a private detective just to keep an eye on that dude. If he messes up, and then you got him, basically. So he's really a sneaky SOB, I tell you. I know one day he's going to slip up, and they're going to get him. I hope they do get him. If not, I'll be furious if he's still working at the campus as an RA. But anyway, that's going to be it for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more midnight terrorist reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the 10 Man Squatter channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey 10 Man Taylor. I say that's a wrap and have a nice day.